Hey, Brennan here with another video. I wanted to take a look at Bitflows. Bitflows is a new automation tool from the BitApps family. They've got a bunch of other products that they make, and this is their newest offering. And it's kind of similar to Bit Integrations, which they released a year or two ago, but this is a much more advanced automation builder. And this lets you, it's built here as the alternative to Zapier in WordPress. It's very much like Zapier or n8n or any of the other non-WordPress automation flows that you might be used to. But this one runs directly in your WordPress site as a plugin. And so I just wanted to go over the plugin with you. The team at BitApps was nice enough to give me a license to try out as they see that I make some automation content, and so I wanted to take a look at it and share the journey with you. And we'll go over making a small demo and kind of talk about the pros and cons of it, and we'll go from there. So if you're not using any kind of automation tool, I definitely recommend it. I've got a good video about how these are tools and skills that you should learn as a WordPress professional so that you can help yourself and your clients save money and time. And so I think it's really worthwhile to look at one of these tools. And if you want to stay as close to WordPress as possible, this lets you host it directly on your WordPress site. You can technically use their lowest tier plan because you're able to connect it to other WordPress sites and automate other WordPress sites directly from a single install. So, for instance, you could install this on a blank subdomain site and use that as your automation platform for all your various WordPress sites. Um, you know, if you are not familiar with WordPress automations or automations in general, basically what it does is it ingests some kind of action. There's some kind of trigger node, either a webhook or some kind of WordPress hook, or even outside of WordPress, you can use some of the hooks there. And this will trigger some kind of workflow. And after that, you basically are left up to your own devices of how that will automate other parts of your workflow, whether it's going to be sent to MailChimp, whether it's going to be, sent to Dropbox for in this example, or, Google Row in a sheet. And, you can do many steps after this. You can connect multiple flows in a row linearly. You can use conditions to, display if then statements. You can have it iterate over data and loop through data. So it's extremely powerful and a really great way to get into automations. And so I wanted to just take a look at it today and go through some of what I've found so far. So the site is nice. It's got a nice site. You can kind of read through what it gives you. It gives unlimited tasks, unlimited workflows, which is nice to not be limited in a certain number of automation steps or anything like that. And like that lets you help. It helps you learn and debug as well because you're not like running into any of those limits on automations. But yeah, definitely check out their site. There's a demo you can try for free. Here's the canvas, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Let's just look at pricing real quick. Pricing right now, they have an early bird special. I'm not sure if the lifetime deal is going to go away or how that works. But you can get this for a one-time fee of 149 for one site. And again, that lets you potentially automate multiple WordPress websites. If you want the ease of not having to install it on different websites and you want a more centralized way to do it, you can do that, or you can just buy a developer plan or something like that, and you get a ton of extra sites. And that's really the only limit it looks like in between all the different plans. So it's really just the number of sites you can install it on. I definitely recommend just getting a one site license to try it out. It's still an early product, but I think that it's built by a reputable team that is known for adding new features and keeping up and staying competitive with the competition. So I think it's going to be a good investment to see where they take it and what else they can add to it. So that is just a little bit about the product, and I'll show you. Let's just take a look at what it looks like on the inside. So I've got that installed on a WordPress site. I have the free Bitflows plugin as well as Bitflows Pro. Okay. So you can use the free plan. It's pretty limited from what I could see. But I expect that will again increase so that they can get more paying customers as well. And I'm also using their Bitform plugin and Bitform Pro. This is just so I can have a form on the website. So I can just show you guys a couple items here and we can trigger that from a form. So You can use other forms. And in fact, let's just jump into the flows and got a nice dark mode. You can switch between it. Love that. I love having the dark mode. Um, this is my dashboard. I can see different automations. I can see some of my flows, which ones failed, which ones are partially successful, etc. So those are just me. That's just me testing out some flows. But um, the other the other thing we'll get into is now there's not a ton of flows. Now let's just make a demo here, right? And I'll name it. And there's some templates you can start from. I expect that they're going to have more of those being added. So uh, keep your eyes out for that. And I will just create a blank template here. And what we're met with is this really nice canvas. Okay. So we've got this nice canvas that we can kind of move around. You can hold your space bar to kind of drag stuff around. You can zoom in and out. Very nice. And it's very snappy. Um, but essentially, yeah, you're greeted with this canvas and you're just plopped to your own devices. And so we can start making a trigger. And so for this one, you can see all the various trigger actions. You'll recognize some of these. A lot of them are form plugins that are already, established market players in WordPress. You got Contact Form 7, you got Bitform, that's the one we're going to be using. You got Elementor forms, you got all kinds of different stuff, all the various Fluent products. So these can be various triggers. Some of these you'll find, again, are maybe not having the exact trigger that you need yet. So if you don't see something that you already have, you can go and request that the team build some kind of integration for that. So for this one, I'm just going to pick Bitform. And we're just going to get a trigger success. If you had other triggers here, they would show up, right? So each one has some slightly different triggers, and you'll see the trigger down there. That's different than an action, but triggers the very first step, right? So how are we going to trigger the workflow? Let's select Bitform, and I'll have a successful form as our trigger, right? So here we'll have a drop down. You can have it be any form. I have some ones that I've already made here. So I will select my get and post. And so this is it's not a traditional contact form. I'm actually just using it as sort of a way to just send data, right? Which I guess that is a form at the end of the day, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So we'll add that to the list, to our canvas here, and then we are left up to decide, like, what do we actually want to do. And so you can come in here and you can add apps, right? All the different apps to select from. You also have over here, there's something called tools in this tab here, and this lets us be able to select from delays or routers and conditions, iterators. And you'll see there's some things that are planned, like custom code, email parser, and PDF parser. These are going to be really useful, especially custom code. If you run into a situation where you don't have an integration or you want to just be able to run code, that's going to be very, very useful there. So I'm looking forward to that. But um, one of the things that I'll mention here is that if you don't have a direct integration with something, you can add API requests, and there's also what's called an HTTP request, which, as far as I can tell, they're the same thing. I don't know if there's a real difference there. I'd have to check there, but we're just going to add an API request here, and you can put it on the canvas, and it immediately connects to the previous step. If you drag it too far, it kind of breaks away. I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe make it a little more sticky. But basically, this lets you just make any kind of request to an API. So anything that's not immediately available in the actual list here, we can still make requests to an API. So let's just go through what this looks like. I'm going to use Pexels, which is a free image library. And so I'm here in their documentation. And this lets us authenticate into Pexels and then search by a query. And so what we're going to be able to do is pass dynamic URL from the form into this. And so we can actually search and find images based on that form submission. So what we're looking at here, don't get too overwhelmed. It's just a simple curl command, but this is saying it's doing a header authentication, and then it's passing in the key of authorization, and then the value will just be our API key. And then after that, we're going to take this base URL here, everything before the question mark, because that lets us know these are going to be query parameters after that. But this base URL here, I'll copy this and we'll go back and plop that right into our request URL. Okay. And this isn't going to do anything yet. But we'll kind of circle back to it. But a couple things I'll note. There's no way to just test this API point. You can see this feature's not available yet. Please stay tuned. This will be very useful because as of now, you have to actually submit and start your flow for data to even come in here. So I can't come out here and say, do like a fake submission or just pin some already submitted data into the form. I have to actually go submit the form. So let's just quickly see what this looks like. So before we do that, we're going to need to authenticate into this because you have to, again, based on the documentations and the header, you have to pass in your API key. All right. So the way you do that, there's a couple things we could do. We can pass it in as a header, and we would just type in authorization and then paste in our value here, right? And then that would give us this exact key value pairing, and it would be an H for header, right? So that would totally work, and I could do that. But instead, the other cool thing about Bitflows, I'm going to delete this. All right, and I'm going to go back to my side here, and there's a couple different options. Let me just click here so you can see all of them. But I was in Flows. Connections is where we have all the different logins that we have. But there's something down here called custom apps, which I think is actually really interesting, and that lets us make custom apps. It says it right there in the name. It lets us make some custom apps. So I have a couple here. I have like a Google Drive custom app, and I have my demo Pexel ones, right? So what I'll do is I'll just make a new app for Pexels. Let's just delete, I don't know, let's just delete the S so we're not getting confused. Okay, so I can't delete it because it's being used. So we'll just make a new one and we'll call it Pexels demo. Right, so that's how I know it's our demo one. You can change the logo, you can change the theme, whatever. Let's just make it orange or something. And then we have what we can do is we can add various API calls to this that we want. So what I'll do, I'll make one called like get pics, and I capitalize that just so in my brain I remember it's a get request, right? We have get request and we have all the other ones. So I'll just name it get pics, and I will paste that URL in, right? So same deal. I could just do add header and I could add authorization here, but then we have to enter our key every time. What I can do is enable authentication for this custom app. So let me toggle that on, and I'll go ahead and add a new connection. And again, make sure you name these something friendly because right now there's no way to rename connections. So if you don't rename them, you're going to end up with a bunch that just say custom app connection, and it's going to be hard to remember which ones are which. So I'm going to name this Pexels authorization. Okay. And then from the drop down, I'll select the API key type of authentication. You also have OAuth and basic auth and bearer token. We're just going to be using an API key. And the way I'll do this is I'll type in authorization here as the key. And in the value, let me grab my Pexels API key. I'll blur that out so people don't steal it. But we're going to pass that into the header. And so that means anytime we try to call this custom app, it's going to first authenticate. So that should allow us to not have to type in the API key every time. All right, so we'll save that. And actually, before I do that, let me edit it because the other thing we need to do is give it query parameters, right? If I go back to our documentation, we have the base URL, but then we also need to be able to pass in a query. And there's other things you can pass in. You can pass in stuff like the orientation if you want landscape or portrait or square, sizes, colors, all kinds of different query parameters. But let's just stick with query, orientation, and yeah, maybe that's it. But I can basically add various things that people can type in. So I can do query, and I don't add a value here because all I'm doing is making the actual app. So we'll do query, and then we'll do orientation. Or did I spell it wrong? Or, orientation. Okay, there we go. So I can update this, and actually, let's see what. Oh, interesting. You can add default values. You can make it require. That's cool. I didn't actually see that when I was doing the demo. Um, but yeah, basically, I now have this authorization that I can add here. We got to make sure that we click that drop down and select it, and then we can select these values. So let's just update that, and then we can come back to our flow, and I'll click into my flow. And for this one, I can now select that from a custom app. So like if I scroll down to Pexels, there's my Pexels demo. All right. So I can select that, and I can see my get pics integration. Great. So let's select that. It's already handled the authentication for me. So now all I need to do is pass in a query, right? So I can do like, I don't know, trains, and we'll do landscape. All right. And again, it would be nice if I could just hit test. Can't do that yet. I'm guessing that's going to be coming soon. That'll be super nice for just getting your flows up and going and being able to debug. But until then, we will be able to pass data in. So now what I can do is I can hit test flow once, right? Because we want to be able to test the flow. We want to be able to get some data and see if the everything's working, right? So we'll hit listen for new response, right? And then I have that form already added to a page here. I'll refresh, and I'll just add my name. And then I just made this form. It's just a simple text input form, really. There's nothing special to it. Let's do planets. All right, and we'll submit that. And then if I come back to our flow, I'll see a little pop-up here in the top. Trigger data received. All right, so that data is now in here. All right, so I can click logs, and I can see here it was successful, right? And I can see the details of it. And I can see right here the form was successfully submitted. And I can see the input, and I can see the output. The output is here. There's my form data. There's my name. Perfect. And then what it's doing is running that API call. All right. You can see here it's successfully completed the API call to Pexels, and I can see here it's returned a bunch of photos. Right. Now, if I click on this, it's not planets though. It is, oops, it is a train. All right. So we don't want the train because we need to actually pass in the URL dynamically. But we have the form submitted. So now I can actually open my Pexels demo. And instead of this static query, I can delete that. And I can open up my form data, and I can pass in the form search query that I have directly in my form here, right? So now it's going to be able to pass in whatever I search in that form is going to do a query to Pexels and get the images there, right? So now I can, again, I guess I'll just show it again. I can test, listen for workflow, come back here, Brendan, and then let's search for dogs. All right. And that was successful. I'll come back here, trigger data received. Now I come back in my log. Again, it's successful. All right. There's the details. There's the Pexels demo API endpoint. And here I can see it's correctly passed in my search query. And so then I'm returning actual data for, related to that query. All right. So that's perfect. That's working exactly as we want. All right. All right, so now what do we want to do? Let's maybe send this data. This is, something I do all the time where I do an API request and I just want to dump the data into Google Sheets. And so let's just select, let's just see if we have Google Sheets. Yeah, we do. And we want to add a row. Okay, so we have an add row. I've already made a connection, so I'm just going to use the same one again. It's pretty easy to do. You just, cover that in some other video. But basically, I have a sheet that I've already connected in, and I have a Bitflows form or Bitflows sheet here. All right, so that's the one I'm going to select from which ones I want to select, and then which sheet I'm going to pick the pics sheet. All right. So in this one, we've got 3 values. We've got name, search term, and we want to dump the image URL in here so that we can use the image URL later on. So I can add field mapping here, and I can just do like column A, column B, and column C. And column A is going to be, the name. This could be the email address, probably more realistic to use email rather than just someone's name, but get the idea. And then I'm going to pass in my name there. And then I'm going to, again, select my form data and put my query in here. All right. And then in this one, we're going to try and just pick the, let's see, the source. So here's like the source of all the URLs for the images. And this is just the data returned from Pexel's API call. So I'll stick that in there, and we'll see why that won't work in a second. So let's just test this, and let's see if we get some data into our Google Sheet, right? So let's go back to our form, all right? And again, I'll enter my name, and let's search for, I don't know, pumpkins, all right? And I'll submit that, and then let's go to our Google Sheet, and we'll see there is my data. So there's my name, there's our search term, but we don't have the URL, right? And that's kind of the most important thing. So what's going on there? Now, it works a little differently than other automation tools. Some let you just immediately put that data in, as I just showed. This one doesn't seem to allow that. There's other ones that don't really do work the same way. So what we need to do is iterate over it. So first I'll unlink this. And now what we want to do is go to our tools. And actually what we want to do is add an iterator so that we can iterate over that list of images and add the images to our Google Sheet. All right. So I can connect these together, and I'll open this, and under the array, what we're going to do is choose just photos, the top level array. And I'll click that. And then we can say like how many we want to start from the first one and go to, like the first 10 or something like that. I think Pexels returns you 10 images anyway, but if you wanted to get 20, you could do that here. And so now what we need to do is pass that iteration data into the Google Sheet. All right. So the problem with this is, again, I need to test out the flow because I come back here, I don't have that iteration step. And so again, it's kind of a little bit feels bad to have to keep coming back and submitting this to make sure it works. Again, let's search for like, I don't know, Paris. And then we're going to need to connect this back in our flow. So that was submitted again. We'll come back here. Oh, you know what? I didn't hit the test flow once. Let's listen to new response. Let me also, okay, yeah, that was not added there. All right, so this is listening for a response. Now I'll do this again. Let's do Paris and submit. All right, and again, we'll come back here. Did anything change? Doesn't look like it. So our logs, what do our logs say? Partial success. All right, so let's look at this. And we can see it's run the iterator, and it's got, a bunch of items there. And then it's got the Google Sheet, but unfortunately it doesn't have that image URL. So again, we're going to need to go to our Google Sheet, and we don't have a value in there yet. So let's add a value. Now we have the iterator. And so the iterator has spit out the various URLs here, right? So I can select URL. Actually, I think can I do source and original? I think I can. Let's try that out. Leave it in. Well, then we got to debug it anyway, right? So, all right. So let's go back and submit again. All right. Let's do Paris again and submit. Successfully submitted. And let's come back here. Now we can see our data is flowing in. We're going to get 10 rows or whatever, 10 iterations, right? So the first one is the header, right? Then our pumpkins, and then we get 10, and we have a different image for each one, right? There's one of our Paris images. There's the Louvre, right, in Paris. So we've gotten 10 different images of Paris, and it's just organized neatly here, ready to go. So again, I can come back and do, Tokyo, and I'll submit a different name, Dave Smith. I don't know. So let's submit that, and there it goes. So we've got who submitted it, we've got the search query that they've typed in, and then we have the actual images, right? So, oh, that looks like Tokyo. That's Tokyo. Wait, this one looks like Paris. Wait, no, that's not the Eiffel Tower. Just kidding. That is Tokyo. That is not the Paris skyline. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it is working. There's another image of Tokyo. So it's a nice way to just quickly get, these are actually really nice images. Beautiful imagery that you need. It's organized by the actual query that completed it. This is just kind of an intro. Obviously you can do a lot more with this, but I just wanted to quickly show how to think about automation, how to use the Bitflows platform. We made a custom app. We're using dynamic API routing. We're iterating. We're passing that data to a Google Sheet. It's a simple thing, but it's like, anyway, I love this stuff. I think it's really interesting. I'm really excited about the future of Bitflows. And, I really think that this type of offering that you can give to your clients, and sort of build off flows, make them more complex, make them, use conditions, all that stuff. There's going to be more features added. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to really show in this. I'll do it one more time, right? Let's do Jane Smith, and let's do, it doesn't have to be a location, right? It could be anything you want. It could be cats, right? We'll submit our cat query. We'll come back here and we'll see. There we go. And I can already tell from the URLs, like there's kittens, cats, whatever, right? So there's our cute kittens. So we have, we're getting 10 images each time. Nice way to stay organized, keep your queries looking good. And yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to show on this one. I do think it's really cool that you can make custom apps and you can add this stuff and, just take it from there. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any other questions, you have some ideas for what kind of flows you want to see, let me know. All right. See you next one.